And you're
Yep.
filming this as well. You're recording film. You said you
Yes.
came up with it. Said you're recording,
Is that okay with
and
you?
and you're filming as well.
If it's
Yes,
okay with you,
I give my consent.
thank you. I appreciate that. And we always hit the we already hit the record button because we found that
Mhm.
we forget sometimes and then we don't
Ah,
record anything.
Yeah, and that's
I
not
hope
good.
I'm as engaging as whoever that happened to
Oh,
with.
Steve
you
Scott.
you will be, trust me.
Uh-huh.
But
I
sorry,
never
Jim, I
trust anyone
interrupted
who
you.
says trust me. That's the first thing I
That's
tell my
exactly.
students. If anyone says trust me, better not.
Better not.
They shouldn't need
Sounds
to
like
say that.
wisdom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah,
So,
Jim,
what the
introduce
gist of
yourself,
it
sir.
is, it like a historical or what? I should have done some
Yeah.
research on your website and that. I've been busy making my own website actually.
Oh, nice.
Oh
Nice.
yeah,
Mm.
that no, cool. I was
Mhm.
looking at your website, I think. There is a
Which one?
website.
I've
Well, I
got
don't
so
know.
many.
I don't
How many
remember.
websites have you got? I've got so
Peter
many.
Koppes, peterkoppes.com. I thought that's what it was.
Yeah,
Um,
that was done by a fan and
but that
with
was yeah.
an engineer that I don't know if you know much about Shadow Cabinet was the first church fan
Yeah, oh
website,
yeah,
and
for
he
sure.
and so he's moderating that one for me now, and he's
Oh cool.
putting all the stuff that's my historical stuff there, making that available on there bit by bit.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
looked good. Yeah. So
Yeah,
first of all,
who's the website? Yeah, you're Jimmy. Okay,
I'm Jimmy
good on you.
James.
Yeah.
This is my podcast historically, but Jim and I became friends, and when I had his band Airedale on the episode, and ever since then, Jim and I have been, this is our
So it's
podcast.
Jim and Jimmy.
Yeah,
Let's
Jimmy and
get through
Jim.
that.
yeah,
Yep.
Convo.
yeah.
Okay.
Two Jameses, one Peter, for tonight. So,
Uh-huh.
but
It's our
yeah,
first
so
Peter.
Sometimes we call it a repeat if there's two Pete's, but I'm more of a compete.
repeat,
I'm more of a
Pete and
compete
repeat. Yeah,
and compete.
Well, you're the
and
first Pete,
compete.
so maybe we'll have
So
Peter
yeah,
Murphy next. Peter Murphy next.
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
one day we'll see.
Maybe.
We got to get the good. We got to get the best Peters out of the way first.
Right. Of course.
Oh, you don't need to flatter me. I've,
uh, I thought it would get us everywhere.
uh,
Frater.
uh, it sounds pretty arrogant, but I'm pretty complete. Especially if you saw my other website, actually, the one that I have is a guitar scales website.
I haven't
Um,
seen it. Jim may have
yeah,
though.
Guitar Modal Harmony is the
Oh,
name of the website, and I've conquered some music theory that hasn't been known for 300 years since classical music theory,
Awesome.
yeah.
specifically to augmented and diminished chords. And this is usually where people start glazing over and go, "Oh no, augmented and diminished chords."
I we
Well,
had a question
who
about it.
uses those? The
Yeah, we have a
Beatles,
we have a
and
section on
that's the
that in
difference
our
between
questions.
them
The Beatles
and the
used it.
Hendrix chord and the yeah, absolutely.
Ah,
In fact,
Hmm.
maybe name drop here. I met Eric Idle the other day because the tour manager of the church who um, was tour managing him here in Australia invited me along to them, and I was going to ask him because on the Eric Idle has a podcast, not a podcast, a YouTube video about writing the life of Brian. Always look on the bright. Oh, there's your son.
Yeah. It's Owen.
Yeah, cool, cool. Music, good on
easy
you,
baby.
Owen.
Hey,
Yeah.
Ellen.
So he mentions in the writing of Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, George Harrison said to him, "You should use a diminished chord." He said
Hmm.
the Beatles used to call it their sneaky chord.
Sneaky corn.
Yeah, and I was going to ask him, and I forgot, but I thought about it just recently that I'm going to ask him, what did George Harrison say about the augmented chord? Did he? But if he said that's our secret chord, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. But
Sick
I
anymore.
believe that's what the Beatles said. If George Harrison said the diminished chords were their sneaky chord, I
Hmm.
reckon their augmented chord was their secret chord.
Well,
Yeah, that's
And
what
the
it sounds like.
Hendrix chord, they didn't even know what that was because, McCartney was on McCartney 321 with Rick Rubin recently. And he was saying, "Oh,
hmm.
this is the chord that I used in Michelle. Michelle Marbell, that chord
Hmm.
Marbell is actually the Hendrix chord." And that's where I believe Hendrix heard it.
Hmm.
And the Beatles, used that without championing it because they didn't even know what it was actually. They just
Oh.
knew it sounded different. They didn't know it had a name or anything. And then Jimi Hendrix heard Miles Davis playing it because they were friends. And Miles Davis, he said, "What's that?" And Miles Davis said, "That's the dominant 7 sharp 9 that you use all the time,
Hmm.
and it's a major and a minor chord at the same time, idiomatically." And so I was figuring out all these augmented and diminished scales, which they think are 8 notes or 6 note scales. I found out they're all 7. And in the middle of it, I found out the scale for the Hendrix chord as well, which has never been published
Oh,
Mm.
nice.
except by me on YouTube.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have a
well,
whole
that's really
section
cool.
about that to ask you
That's
about.
my claim to fame. The church, forget that, man. The church is going to pale into comparison. I'm a musicologist,
You are.
apparently, and in the field of harmony. And I told you I was quite a complete fool of myself. And this is the reason, because the science of music is a mathematics, and it's not a matter of taste. This is a mathematical proof that I've made. It's a thesis, but I'm not
Yeah.
in any college that I can get a doctorate yet.
Yeah,
Not yet,
Oh, pardon.
right?
still
Not
can
yet.
happen.
Yet
You
is the
still,
key word.
I can tell
Yeah.
the tone of your voice that you do have faith in me,
I do.
I do,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
unless you're just trying to be flattering again.
No. Like I said, we have a whole section about the modal
Mhm.
therapy, the harmony,
Oh,
and
the music evolution therapy.
yeah, and
That's
we have
that's
a
the
section about
album
that,
I
and I'm
produced.
still
Yeah.
trying to wrap my head around it, to be honest.
Really?
But
Well, I
no, I think
released
it's
that as a
great.
reference album. It's a reference album because I read a book on astrophysics called E equals MC squared about how all the professors humiliated their students, including Einstein, the girl who um, knew what the composition of the sun was, and several other students were ridiculed by their professors, and then the professors went on to steal the ideas of their students that had been postulated. And so I thought I'll publish all my scales on a record as a reference, and cheekily I can even tear anyone down off YouTube if they use my scales because they're copyright
Oh,
in
nice.
my name, which I shouldn't do. You're not supposed to copyright scales,
Yeah, I
but
didn't
I
know you
could.
could. Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
It's so interesting.
So anyway, I'm glad I got that out of the way because that's probably the
Yeah,
most important thing for me. That's what the last several years have been, with distractions being devoted to that. Because as a songwriter myself, and the experience I've had of my students writing magnificent music, I've heard the best music in the world. It's from my students, not the boring crap mediocrity that people have to listen to, because and it's based on the Beatles, as I mentioned before. That
That's
if the
cool.
Beatles were any good, that's why they were good.
Right.
yeah.
It grew their genius. They were
Hmm.
genius, but it grew their genius.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
It's really
So that's all
interesting.
I needed to say now. We can end this here.
Well,
No,
it's been
no,
fun talking with you.
yeah, sorry. That's all we need.
Good
I
night.
got nothing more. That's all I got until I
You
release
have,
my album with all of these
oh, that's
ideas
not
that I'm
true.
going to
You
do.
you have so much more to offer us.
I have. You wouldn't believe
Um,
the songs. I write songs backwards, like a comedian has a punchline and they write the joke to suit the
you're right.
punchline, right? And I've got this musical theory, and I've got all these pieces of music ready to
Hmm.
make into a record that are written backwards because I know what the trick is, and I put them into
Mm.
chord progressions. Very
Wow.
contrived. Oh, I shouldn't have told everyone. They're going to think it's
Yeah, yeah.
sounds contrived. No.
Are
Secret
you
Okay.
sauce.
saying that you're working on that right now?
Well, I haven't had
Putting,
time. The website was supposed to be finished years ago, but
uh,
I just keep developing it. I had to learn how to build videos and
yeah.
and the website. I actually built the website myself, and it's been
Oh,
modified. Like so,
yeah.
I've had to become like a website builder. I've had a
A
lot of experience. I built
webmaster
the first. Well, yeah, I am pretty much
on top of everything else you're doing.
yeah, yeah. All
Yeah.
the software, like the Squarespace e-commerce website,
Hmm.
and all of the ramifications of that. I don't know if you've done with that
Oh my gosh.
e-commerce on a website
Hmm.
and
No,
protecting your stuff. No, it's
yeah.
it's monstrous. But it's like I think kids these days. When I was a kid, you built your car, you built your first car, put a motor together, and stuck it in the car.
Hmm.
These days, every kid should learn how to build a website. That's what
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't touch
Yeah.
a car anymore, but so that's
Yeah.
Hey, learn coding now.
It's very
Yeah, for
stimulating,
sure.
and it's very purposeful. Anyone who want to run their own business, you have to have a website.
Yeah,
That's true.
Mm.
That's true.
So I'm very happy of
for
being
sure.
very fulfilled with all these things, but I know what I got, with these songs that I want to release as well. But anyway, let's go because you've done a little bit
Yeah.
of research. So yeah, that music evolution therapy, it's supposed to be played on shuffle. It's 56 tracks that are 30 seconds long. Try to make it more listenable by putting an orchestral guitar effect that I used with the church quite a lot actually on the sound of it. But it's a piano instead of a guitar doing it, and that's supposed to be played on shuffle because it's really a
Hmm.
reference album. I'm
Okay.
about to
So
sneeze and
Okay.
got a bit of a cold weather over here, so um, I'll let you know.
All right.
we'll hit the
Yeah.
No,
sneeze
it's not.
button.
Yeah.
Oh, that I forgot about that. Okay, go on. I
All right.
think it's
Ready?
gone.
You ready to get into this?
Yeah.
All right.
And
Yes, let's do
go.
it.
And go. No. Um, so we always kind of do, we kind of go chronologically, but not exactly. So we always start with just like asking about your early influences and your musical
Are you a
foundations.
musician, by the way? Because that helps if I know.
I'm
I
not,
am.
but
I
Jim
am.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're pretty basic,
What does
questions,
Jim
but Jim.
play?
Guitar. I try
Okay.
to
A
anyway.
lead guitar?
Yeah, I play bass
You do.
also, and
Oh, bass. That's the
have
secret. My whole scales was built out of bass modes,
oh,
actually.
excellent. And
And so
ukulele.
Hendrix's whole style is bass. So the bass is the secret, actually.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Okay, so sorry, Jim James. I
That's
just
okay. No problem. No problem.
it helps me
So
communicate
speaking
if I know.
speaking of guitar, what first drew
Mhm.
you to the guitar, and what other instruments do you
Uh,
play? Because I know
a
you
Hammond
play
organ.
quite a few. So,
Mm.
and how did you
A
develop
Hammond organ
your?
first attracted me.
Okay, cool. Keep
Yeah,
going.
because I wasn't interested in guitar. My father had instruments around the house, and I wasn't interested in guitar. Or there was a vibraphone there, in fact, but
Hmm.
then he was looking after a Hammond organ for his keyboard player who was between houses, and I just became fascinated by that. And there's an irony to it because they have this circular rotating speaker with Hammond organs, and it's a
Hmm.
very spiritual instrument. And that's obviously why they use them in churches. So it's like a
Hmm.
church organ kind of thing. Very expensive, costs the same as a new car. And
Hmm.
when my father said, what he had to take it away, and he said, "What would you like? To an instrument?" I said, "I want a Hammond organ." So I can't. That costs as much as a new car. So he bought me a drum set instead,
Hmm.
and paid for
So
lessons, which was nice.
that's the same ballpark as an organ, right?
Yeah, well, he knew I wasn't interested in guitar or anything like, so he just bought
Yeah.
a drum kit and he paid for lessons. But I think he thought that he was going to, get me to end up playing drums in his band. He had a
Uh,
50-50 cabaret band that did old time and new music and that.
Hmm.
And I realized there was a great foundation in there because I was learnt Latin American music, like a bossa nova. This is what
mhm.
Ringo Starr and all the jazz musicians of the day that are in rock bands, Charlie Watts and that, Ginger
Hmm.
Baker, they all learnt Latin American rhythms.
Hmm.
And the bossa nova, which is, Girl from Ipanema, was like that broke Latin American rhythms right around the world. And the Beatles are based on I told you I was a musicologist. The Beatles are based on a bossa nova. That's what the Ringo beat is. And
Hmm.
I
so I
didn't
was able to
realize
play
that.
all of those things. Yeah. And so I became, and then I ended up joining a band at school, and they one of the guys was very generous and taught me how to play guitar and
Hmm.
piano, basically. Like he had a piano, taught me boogie woogie piano. So I had no idea what was actually going on the keyboard because I was just mucking around on the organ. It's just like for me, it was like, didn't play anything. So that's why I ended up on guitar. And in the end, I joined Steve Kilbey and his band in Canberra as
Hmm.
a drummer
Oh,
that
okay.
already had a drummer whose
Oh,
drums
okay.
me and my friend
Yeah.
used to drive around because he didn't have a car. So we used to drive him to his gigs and that with the drums in my car. And so we ended up, I had a band where I was learning guitar and we were rehearsing in the same place that I found
Hmm.
because of this. Steve Kilbey's kind of band was called Beyond Beavers, later to become Precious Little when I joined.
That's
And
right.
so that drummer was in that band. They saw me playing drums at one of the rehearsals that they came to early, and then they said, "Do you want to join our glam rock band as the second drummer?"
Hmm.
Which I did, So we were like an Alice Cooper of Canberra, believe it or not, especially after the guitarist tried to burn his guitar at one of the school events. But and then they kicked out the guitarist, and I took over on guitar and brought in this other guy from Syncretism, who was like the best guitarist in Australia,
Oh, okay.
if
Yeah.
not one of the best in the world, I still believe now. And he played he was left-handed, just played a right-hand guitar upside down, and like Albert King style. And he was very generous with his capacity as a guitarist, and he just showed me all of the Ritchie Blackmore guitar scales and Robin Trower guitar scales and things
Oh,
like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
What
so
band was that?
that was we were Precious Little when I was on drums, and then we became Baby Grande
Okay.
with
Yeah.
an E, because we were
Yeah.
classy
We've
glam
heard
rock
them.
band. Yeah, what do you mean we've heard them?
Yeah, they're on
I mean, we've
Spotify.
heard the music from
I was going to say,
Baby
because
Grand.
there was the band The Hooters used to be called Baby Grande, and they were managed by the manager that was managing the church during the Starfish era.
Okay.
How weird! don't know why I mentioned that. It's not. It's kind of weird that
It's a different
not
different
very, not
band.
very exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't have an E.
Without the E at the end.
Yeah. Anyway, I just it's remarkable. It's not very important.
Is it true that Steve was kicked out of that band?
No,
No.
no, I left,
You
and
left.
then
Okay.
I left, and Steve started playing guitar. What happened? When we had two drummers, he was the drummer, he was the bass player, and then the singer left, and he became the singer, and then the guitarist left, and then I came in I started playing guitar, and we brought in Dave Scotland from Syncretism, and Steve became like the lead singer because a friend of mine, he was an Asian guy who actually connected us, Dave Scotland and I, from school days, from Canberra Grammar School. He came in and played bass, and because there was this band, it's like a precursor to Kiss, believe it or not. They were like without the makeup, they were like that kind of tough rock band, and they had two Asians in Australia, very
Oh,
famous
cool.
band called
Very
Hush.
cool.
And because Hush was
Ah.
so cool, and we thought, oh, it'd be cool to have my Asian friend who was quite an intellectual. He played classical guitar and loved classical music, believe it or not.
Hmm.
And he was the son of an
Hmm.
Australian diplomat and Canberra grammar. So he ended up probably embarrassing his family, turned into
Yeah.
a glam rock star.
Yeah,
So
right.
he took it pretty strong. And then I left that band because I just thought it wasn't. It did quite well. We supported a lot of the top Australian bands, and that we had a great manager.
Hmm.
But they almost got a deal with EMI.
Oh, wow.
But
Yeah.
and after I left, and I thought it's fine, yeah, good on you. But
Hmm.
they decided that the singer couldn't sing, so they dropped them,
Yeah.
Mm.
and which is very interesting. So the rest of the band dropped Steve, or left the band.
Okay, so
Okay.
there was no band basically, right? At that
Well,
point.
they just left him.
Right. Yeah, he was saying he was fired, so.
That's not the same as getting
No, if
fired,
you
I
get
guess. I don't
fired,
know.
if it's like Pink Floyd, they kept the name, but they no, they just left. They didn't fire him; they just left.
They just
Oh,
left.
okay. He was Baby Grand at that point.
I love that.
Yeah, he wasn't fired.
I love
Hmm.
it. I love it. You're not fired. We're just leaving. See ya.
Kind of sounds similar, though.
Well, I know
Uh,
people love all that invective. Like, it was a fantastic band. The people in that band were really quite excellent human beings, and
yeah.
I've have to say I've been a bit disappointed from then on. I had my
Oh, really?
expectations of being in a band. As much as I left the band, they always
Yeah.
remained good, dear friends of mine.
Hmm.
Apart from
Hmm.
Steve, which we had this is probably both of us wondered. We never were going to ever contest each other on the media, and I'm not going to provide anything that might stir anything up like that because it doesn't need to be. It's just I thought we were all pretty mature people,
Yeah.
and certainly Steve's has got an amazing intellect, and on a friendship level, um, I'm not going to say anything that I don't have any animosity towards him, whatever. In fact, I defend him mostly. Like that band left him, and then I started a band with him,
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
which I left several times more than anyone knows about. Because like after Blurred Crusade was recorded, I left the band, and then they invited me back to tour in case because they thought it would be important, and then we got an American deal for the first album, and they because I was like the executive manager of the band, I was kind of running
Oh,
those operations. So we went
yeah.
to Steve and I went to America to meet Capitol Records for the first in anticipation of the release of the first album there.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
so no one knew that I'd actually left the band before Blurred Crusade came out.
Oh, had
And
no
then
idea. Yeah.
and then I had to leave the band before Heyday because they changed recording deals whereby the band had to actually pay for the recordings before you'd get any royalties. And being the executive manager of the band
Uh,
through all this time, I knew that there wouldn't be any royalties forthcoming. So I said, I've got two kids, I can't afford to be in this band anymore
yeah.
unless we write songs together, because that's the only income stream is from writing songs. And I knew we could write songs. In fact,
Hmm.
my opinion is that we wrote a lot more than what Steve actually gave credit to me, particularly, which is one of the reasons I left the band. Not out of animosity or just out of feeling
Yeah.
like neglect, which is pretty much my feeling of being in the band is always a feeling of neglect. But I don't get emotional about it, and I won't you know attack anyone. But
We
that
appreciate your candor, just sharing that,
yeah, well,
You
that's
know,
why
everybody's got
people
their
bother
own
to talk.
perspective, and I
Mhm.
just, we were curious about how you felt about that. If maybe I kind of got that feeling that maybe that
Yeah.
was it was something to do
Well,
with like,
most
hey,
bands
I want
break
to,
up. Like,
yeah,
yeah, well, I've lectured and talked about this. Like, most bands break up because of songwriting disputes,
Hmm.
yeah,
and
well, yeah,
mm,
it's not out of the
and
norm.
no,
So
it is the norm. And people like you too, I'm pretty sure an Australian band called Midnight Oil, they just share the songwriting between the whole band, even if there's mostly two members.
That's
And
probably the best way to do it.
well, they're still together.
Right. Right.
yeah,
It's like
there's the
more like
proof, I
family.
guess. Yeah,
That
yeah,
that's the proof. Yeah.
No animosity.
So yeah. Well, it comes down to livelihood too, survival. So I said, I'm sorry, guys, I won't be able to be on the next album because if we don't write songs together, I've got no income stream from the under the new recording labels
yeah,
Yeah.
because they're
yeah,
making expensive videos as well. The videos are really expensive as well, So you had to
Hmm.
pay that back before the band would make any money. Only the songwriters made money, and so
Oh,
they
wow.
they agreed they said, oh, okay, let's write songs together for the Heyday album, which was a really important not cultural, I suppose, evolution of the band, I suppose, is
yeah,
to be writing songs together.
Hmm.
yeah,
The audience seemed to like it for sure.
mm-hmm,
And then
absolutely,
again, I left after Priest Equals Aura came out because I felt some neglect again and when you're in a band, it's like being in a family that you're not allowed to speak ill of your family.
Hmm.
I've always regarded myself as an independent-minded artist, and I've always described myself as having one foot in the church and one foot out of it,
Hmm.
and that sometimes I just had to step right out of it to for my own sake, my own sanity, and also because I thought, you know, sometimes financially things weren't going to provide for me anyway, so I might as well spend my time devoted to my own activities than the band.
Hmm.
Uh, so I left after Priest Equals Aura,
I think that's a
and
really
then
interesting perspective that you just shared because,
Mhm.
it's easy for, I think, people to think, oh, Peter's left and come back and left. But for you, it's pretty much what you said is, if I'm hearing you right, is pretty much like
Mhm.
I kind of always was kind of independent minded, so I kind of always had a foot outside too, and to do my own thing. So,
Yeah, I've always
you
had a
know,
very high opinion of myself and my own creativity. And one of the funniest things, I'm just, saying what people
well, I
might
mean,
imagine, but I actually do. This is the weird thing. Like,
you have to stand
go
up
on.
for yourself in those
Yeah,
situations.
see, I don't. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah,
I'm a pacifist. I'm the kind of person that if you don't like it, I'll just leave. You don't have to shoot me. And
yeah.
I don't provoke. I'm not, you know, I,
But in a way, that's standing up for yourself, and you're saying, "Hey, I'm going to go do my own thing instead."
the word is
That's okay.
assertiveness. And I learned that the term assertiveness when I became a teacher, a lecturer, and I thought, oh, I'll just, be a friendly teacher to my class and that. And they take advantage of it. You had to some point
Yeah.
find this line of assertiveness. It's one of the great secrets of life is to be assertive. And it's kind of like
Hmm.
you're making a deal where everybody is happy, and that you get that when you're in the studio writing songs, mixing songs, record deals, dealing with everybody. Having an assertiveness is one of the great secrets of empowerment for
So
everyone's happiness.
Yeah.
it's like
I think
setting
that's.
boundaries.
That's the thing.
I mean,
Boundaries again are all territorial things. Like boundaries, I
Hmm.
don't have boundaries as an artist. Artists shouldn't have any boundaries. They should be open-minded to everything creatively and everything philosophically, everything politically, socio-politically. In fact, the term is not morality, but amorality, and it depends what dictionary you look up for what amorality is. And by um, definition of what morality is and immorality, why they have another word, amorality, I think is because amorality is you are above the law, which people go, oh, they have all these interpretations. Words are we're using words here, and people have all
Hmm.
the interpretations of words. They have
Yeah.
predetermined attitudes, whether they like you,
Hmm.
don't like you, depending on prejudicial things and bias. And most people are biased, and some people like Mark Manson, who wrote that book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and his
Oh yeah. Yeah.
monumental book, Everything's Fucked, a book about hope, which gives you all of the proof. He collected all of the data sets of proof that mankind is intrinsically biased and doomed without an AI chip to reprogram their thinking. That's the spoiler alert. It came out in 2019. That's his opinion, and I subscribe to it completely. There's
Interesting.
very, although he doesn't ever mention psychopaths and narcissists and the difference between the two, which is a really critical difference. But um, psychopaths are very interesting people, quite brilliant geniuses, and narcissists wish they were and don't know that they're not.
Interesting. Okay.
And a narcissist won't
Yeah.
apologize, but they all have exactly the same traits, except a narcissist won't apologize and makes it very easy to identify them.
Hmm.
Mm.
That
Interesting.
is. What if
Yeah.
they're
Well, I became
covert?
an expert, and I'm not going to say why I became an expert. It might be plainly obvious. You just have to
Oh
guess which
man.
is which.
Fair enough.
Can we go? I want to go backwards just a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Can you tell us about your earliest musical influences, like what any albums or bands or different
yeah,
artists or
absolutely,
whatever? Yeah, I'd
absolutely.
love
Like
to hear about that.
my father was in this cabaret band, 50-50, I mean 50% old time, 50% pop, and uh, and his band was called Purple Haze.
Oh, really?
Never
So
heard
I
of
spent my
that phrase.
yeah,
I've
so
never.
I spent my pocket money and bought him Hendrix's smash hits album because I couldn't
Yeah.
afford buying albums for myself. So that was the first album I ever bought. I bought it for him
Oh, that's cool.
because it was
For
my
was
my
that for
sister.
in quote marks in for him?
Well, he probably did the same things. He bought me drum lessons and all the rest of it because he probably wanted me to play drums with him, which I ended up doing and
Hmm.
learning a lot about this old time music, the Great American Songbook,
Hmm.
which is what the Beatles all knew, which all have augmented and diminished chords in the Great American Songbook. And that's why the Beatles, they were just basically doing American Great American Songbook songs, that Frank Sinatra catalog.
Hmm.
They were doing that with a rock beat. That's pretty much their idiom.
Hmm.
That's their
Hmm.
trick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about that music from playing drums in the band with my father on their stuff. But Mitch Mitchell was the drummer in the Jimi Hendrix band that really it was the first album. My sister had a boyfriend who used to come over and play albums and that, and Rubber Soul wasn't that I wasn't that excited about that, and but the Hendrix that Smash Hits album, it just took me very
Mm.
strongly. Also the Shadows, um, the drummers, but I was kind of listening to the drummers. You become myopic as an instrument when you play your instrument. You really listen to things. The lyrics didn't mean much to me. And now that I listen to lyrics, a lot of the stuff, I can see why I didn't bother with them. There were a lot of trite boy meets
Yeah.
girl kind of silly, romantic, wet, juvenile stuff. Anyway, so that I now that I know about the Hendrix chord, which is a psychotropic chord, which is the first seven tracks of the music evolution therapy, because I believe that creates a genius actually. It
Hmm.
as a musician, because it's major and
Hmm.
minor at the same time, it's happy and sad at the same time, which is supposed to be impossible. Classical musicians would not accept that. And
Hmm.
although Strauss used that chord once for an opera to represent Electra, the opera Electra,
Hmm.
as his character, like Peter and the Wolf, his character Electra apparently was represented by that chord. So Strauss knew that chord,
Hmm.
and they called it the Electra chord.
Hmm.
So it's been around a
Wow.
long time. Yeah,
Huh.
but it's really as I've discovered it and then started understanding why. And this chord, it's a psychotropic chord that Hendrix saw purple when he heard it because he had synesthesia and he saw a purple
Oh
haze and
yeah.
that's why he
I
wrote
didn't
Purple Haze.
Oh,
I didn't know he
interesting.
had that. I'd
Yeah,
never
he's
heard
got
that. Huh.
synesthesia. Yeah,
Oh, cool.
and
Huh.
so he couldn't ignore that chord
Yeah.
Hmm.
because it gave him a purple haze
Yeah.
in his front of
Wow.
his eyes. Hmm.
Oh, that's wild.
Wow.
It's the rest of
And
the
but I
story.
think it's really powerful. It's also the idiom of the all blues jazz music. Not that they seem to know that, because blues, you Jim might realize as a guitarist, bass player especially, because the bass players know the DNA, the modes and the scales. A bass
Hmm.
player,
Sure.
that's how they look at music.
Right.
Uh, the almost I think I've lost my drift there. What was I saying? Yeah, as a guitar player, this major and minorness is kind of bizarre that it's not supposed to be able to exist. Oh, the idiom of modern music, of blues, which was classical music that they nailed down all the theory.
Hmm.
It came out of Gregorian chant, which was do re mi fa so, which is the science of the universe anyway. Those do re mi, no one invented that. That's Pythagoras figured out that there
Oh,
was
wow.
12 notes, and then became a
Hmm.
mathematician after that.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
but there's seven out of the 12 intervals that you can have. There's seven, and everyone goes, "Oh, I love the number seven." There's something magical about that too. Not that I'm into all that numerology, but I'm open to everything. There's a
Hmm.
society called the Theosophical Society that one of the members wrote The Wizard of Oz to try and exemplify the tenets or objects, as they call them, of Theosophical Society, which is an openness to all religions and knowledge and the latent power of human beings, and that we all have it within us to be who we want to be if you want to be. And so I've explored a lot of Theosophical Society stuff as well. And that's all about open-mindedness. They have no dogma, whatever. It sounds like a cult, but it's not. It's the opposite.
Hmm.
And so the modern music, like Born to Be Wild, that Born to Be Wild, they're the top
Hmm.
three notes of the that Hendrix scale, which no one has published. But the
Hmm.
Hungarian gypsies knew it, called a Hungarian major, and the Japanese, not Japanese, the Indian, South Indian classical music, they have like 72 ragas, and it's the 70th raga, but they don't actually have chords in Indian music, so they wouldn't have heard the chord, but they would have been affected by the DNA. As a bass player, Jim, you'd know that when a bass player plays the notes, the seven notes for each chord, they change within a song. That's the DNA, and that's
Hmm.
the psychotropic effect.
Hmm.
And that do re mi is a it's the science of the universe. And not only that, I see it as a metaphysical thing where you can connect with the other side, the other dimension. And musicians all talk about, Bob Dylan says, oh, the songs are on strings, I just pull them out of the sky, because they don't really feel that they're doing it, or they just like a channel, a vehicle for it. And
Right.
anyone writing a song, they try and let themselves, the Edges said that when a song comes in the room, you just stand aside and that it's all peripheral. You kind of like see them peripherally, and then you stand back and let it happen.
Hmm.
And that's why it's an infinite thing. The church never ever had writer's block. It's like we just keep
Right.
writing and writing all day until we drop. And every time you write something, they'd be already writing the next one. I'm writing down the scales and the chord shapes and the string that I had open fingers and not fingers on, and said, come on, get there. It's
Yeah.
very, very powerful. So the church is like an amazing body of work the band had done. And probably the best in my mind was when, after Marty left, actually, that that we did some great stuff, all as artists before that. But when Ian Hogue joined the band, we reached a new level of creativity, I think.
Hmm.
21st century music, I believe, which didn't feel, some of the songs that didn't feel derived from anything that gone before. That's why I call it was 21st century music, whereas most bands are deriving from things that have gone before, very obviously, too obviously for my liking.
Hmm.
I don't know. Do you know the Arctic Monkeys? Alex
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turner's the greatest. Since I've been taken to saying that he's the greatest musician since John Lennon died.
Really?
Yes, that's how seriously I treat him on a harmonic level, because I've become so tuned in with that music evolution therapy that it kind of like it matures people musically, and having made it and being so close to it, I can hear what he's doing that's different than anyone else in the world. Tom York went to a certain point,
Hmm.
but he doesn't use augmented and diminished chords. I don't think he knows what they are, but I know he studied jazz because he uses jazz shapes in
Okay.
Paranoid Android and things like that.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
so Alex Turner, like, phenomenal. Sorry for talking so much.
No, it's
No,
okay.
That's,
No,
that's what you're here
you know,
for.
yeah. I'm just gathering my thoughts
I
based on
get
what you
excited
said.
about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
powerful. It's really powerful. It's so inspiring that people think, oh, it's scales and theories. It's a contrivance, but it's not. It's like
Hmm.
it's certain parameters, but music is an infinite realm and has conundrums, and it's a quantum science, actually.
Hmm.
It's an infinite thing on a mechanical level. Like, as a guitarist, again, Jim, if you have a slide on a guitar and you slide up towards the bridge, there's
Right.
more octaves than there is molecules on that string.
Oh,
It
okay.
goes up into all of see,
Yeah.
it's a science.
It's
I've always,
infinite.
found the parallel between science. There's infinite, music is
Yeah.
infinite, really.
Also,
Well,
sound is a frequency. I don't know if that comes into
That's
play
what
at
I'm
all.
saying.
Is that what you're
That
talking
octave,
about?
the frequencies, yeah, it goes
Yeah.
beyond the realm of hearing.
It's
That
it's it's
with the
pretty
slide,
mysterious. It's pretty amazing.
it is.
Yeah,
It
I agree
is.
with that.
But and that I find that inspiring. Like I try to, well, my mind works like that.
Hmm.
You know, I think in terms of scientists, science,
Hmm.
biology. Like lyrics, people usually relate to, you know, the physical world, to try and for metaphors to try and, you know, express whatever music is, lyrically, if
Right.
there's a reason to express it lyrically, when it's perfect.
Hmm.
Hmm. Anyway, so that's
yeah.
where I'm at. I don't know if I've taken you somewhere that you kind of
No,
like
no,
didn't
no.
expect you were going to
I
go
was
there,
trying to
but
form my,
that's exactly where I live.
Hmm.
yeah, and that's great. I was just
Mm.
sitting here gathering my thoughts. I read a little bit about um, the modal harmony and what it means and stuff like that in music
Mm.
and stuff like
Mm.
that. And I was trying to wrap my head around it. And
Mm.
I mean, it sounds like you know um, music should be fluid, I guess. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of the music is not creative because of the things you're talking about. Like modern music, a lot of it is kind of it's kind of black and white, and it's in a box because
I know why. The box is
yeah,
because they don't use augmented and diminished chords.
right,
But
yeah,
worse than that, the Beatles had used lots of major chords as well. John kind of moved into lots of major chords, and then Double Fantasy went back to doing a lot of augmented chords. Cheekily, I'm going to do this for you because I really shouldn't, But
You
I'll
shouldn't,
show
but
you.
please
I'll
do.
show you. Just no, no, to demonstrate this idiom of modern music, right? You've got Day Tripper.
Mhm.
That
Uh-huh.
the Hendrix scale goes, and this is a minor three and a major three, so it's actually not supposed to have that. Are you picking this up? Because I've
I
working with
look,
teams and things like that.
Can you
Teams
hear
is
it, Jimmy?
it doesn't come through very well with the
I think you have
yeah.
a
no,
gate.
so
You might have a gate
yeah,
on there.
you've got a noise suppression.
Yeah.
If in Teams now they've got a default to a noise suppression that's so effectively you can't hear a thing.
Yeah,
I
And
think
Zoom is kind of the
so
same way, I think.
yeah, have they got that? Because they think they're getting really clever,
Let
but
me see.
it's anti-music. It's a conspiracy. But
Hmm.
Teams is so it just cuts out. It's so effective at it. My
Hmm.
new Mac computer did the same thing. I was recording, I had to buy a new interface because I thought my interface had blown up, but the computer at the top of these new Macs is like a sound thing that says
Okay.
you can use noise suppression as well. It's all about people needing to talk and be heard and all of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet TV sound shit. TV engineers are the shittest sound engineers I've ever. I can't believe how pathetic they are. It's annoying. That's my only real grievance. But so you can't hear this very well.
Can hear it that
Can you
time.
hear it?
I heard
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
you
came
heard
through
that?
good. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Yep.
that's the first three notes of the Hendrix scale. The last
Uh-huh.
three are,
Okay.
and the one and the one in the middle is Simpsons, which is an ironic thing. This flat five note is pretty typical of klezmer music, which is Jewish music from Ukraine. Klezmer
Hmm.
music, because I've
Hmm.
done a lot of research on that to try and figure out things if someone else has done stuff.
Hmm.
So the cheeky thing I'm going to do for you now, that Day Tripper, this is the Hendrix chord played in the Beatles shape.
Uh-huh.
So I've rewritten Day Tripper with that note in the riff.
Ah,
Oh wow, that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Can I get shot for that?
Not by us.
Actually, one other thing I'll just tell you, because I only discover these. I know some information just finds its way to me sometimes. I'm not being arrogant about that. I don't know why there's this infinite spiritual thing, maybe. But the first time I think that the Beatles ever used that chord, although they were taught it back in Liverpool by a guy in the guitar shop,
Hmm.
and John, Paul, and George immediately went round to John's place and said, "Listen to this, listen to this." So they had it in their heads in that space of that psychotropic chord that's both major and minor at the same time.
Hmm.
Technically, that's how I describe it. Then John Lennon sang it in "She's Got a Ticket to Ride." That chord is
Mhm.
his singing the chord. He hasn't even played it, and it's really impossible. You have to be a really talented jazz singer. You ask any jazz singer how they sing the blues because they have to force their body to sing a note that's wrong
Hmm.
to be able
Mm.
to
Yeah.
play, to sing the blues. Guitar players always bend notes. I might as well demonstrate that. That's the trick. Because a guitar player, they have to bend it because this is the chord.
Mhm.
That note's wrong. So they bend. That's why they bend the notes in blues. Now singers find that really hard to do that. I realize I got the pick in there. It's probably not
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So this is they had classical music theory that sprung from Gregorian chant, which is the do re mi theory, and then you've had the blues that came and destroyed all of the classical theory, and then you've got me come through now, and I'm destroying classical and blues theory with the idea that augmented and diminished chords all have seven note scales. And you wonder, why didn't anyone think that? I'm going, what? All chords have seven notes as a bass player, they all have seven note scales for every chord. Why
Hmm.
not augmented and diminished chords? Why not? Pretty
Right.
obvious.
Hmm.
So the problem is that they depend on what mode you're in. So
Hmm.
that's why there's 49 scales
Mhm.
on my music evolution therapy, because it depends on not just major or minor, depends which major or minor that, and there's three of each in modes.
Hmm.
So it's pretty, I get pretty excited about this, like talking about it because for me, it's really uh, powerful. And why
Yeah.
music is, as Jimmy James said, in a box. And that's the box that they started writing songs together in bands, jamming up stuff instead of having a songwriter sitting at home writing songs, giving it to their publisher and selling and who sold it to Frank Sinatra and Cole Porter. All those people were they were songwriters and they write
Right.
by themselves. And John Lennon mostly wrote by himself as well. The
Hmm.
Beatles mostly wrote by themselves because you
Right.
can't do this as jamming in a band because the scales change every couple of chords anyway. And so in the 80s, all the bands, I want to write songs myself. So, and or as a band, and so they jam up songs. They can't play complex chord progressions or
Hmm.
complex scale.
Mhm.
And that's why it's gotten to the point now they've just playing very, very simplistic music. And that's the box that you've understood there, Jimmy.
Can
That's
you
the
talk a
box
little
that,
bit about what you call limbo?
yeah. So the limbo scales, because of this mash of classical music and the blues theory just destroyed classical theory. But the piano players had to try and incorporate this blues minor over major thing into their music and into their capacity, and they realized that it was a legitimate form of music. So you end up with this blues jazz
Hmm.
and a whole lot of theory that sprung out of that. Sorry, what was the question again? Explain the
Just
limbo.
explaining what
Now, yeah.
the limbo sound is exactly. Yeah.
So what happened then in my mind as a musicologist, this is how I'd be lecturing if I was going to be lecturing on the basis of my discoveries in scale theory. It came from a very simple thing that I said before that the Beatles used a lot of major chords, and they did that because our brains had been changed by our musical brains and pre-shown being changed by the blues. We were accepting things that were not supposed to be acceptable, like a sad note over a happy chord, and so that broadened our appreciation of music and the songwriters, and they started doing things which were insinuating um, there's a thing called a secondary dominant. They call it in music, which is there's a seventh chord in one of the modes, which is very much a rock and roll thing that songs start in this Mixolydian mode, which was not allowed in classical music and never allowed to start a song on a Mixolydian mode because there was a major chord that had a seventh note that was sad. And it's kind of like opens up a bit of a door, and all the jazz guys and the blues were exploiting that and just playing lots of stuff in this chord that was a major chord that already had a seventh note, and they could push the three in there, giving people an inch, and they'll take a whole fretboard. But so what the limbo thing is, there's no finite theory when you try and find the modes as a bass player. They particularly would know this more than guitar players because for some reason I haven't seen the guitar players understand this, and the bass players kind of know this stuff, and they don't know that the guitar players don't know it or something. I don't know why, but the bass players, because they play DNA scales which is the DNA of music, they play a scale for every chord
Hmm. Right.
or a mode for every chord, and they would know there's these halfway chords that are called the bass players play a Phrygian dominant, which is it's because it's a chord that's not supposed to be in the DNA of the do re mi. It's always in classical music. They always have one of those, but that's been exploited even more by pop writers like Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen. Don't really know that they're doing this, and John Lennon particularly because they didn't know music theory. John Lennon just took it to a more of an extreme, and a lot of the music people are playing now, they might just have a few major chords, but they start on this major chord that's actually a a Phrygian dominant, or I'd call it a major fifth, is the terminology that they use when in classical forms they have these stray major chords.
Hmm.
And so you've got a choice because we're in this area of classical music and blues. You can have a choice whether you choose a specific major fifth or whether you use like a Mixolydian scale over it. So I call that limbo. But
Hmm.
particularly, I used that limbo term as a way for on guitar. The reason I discovered all this stuff is because the guitar is like a only instrument you can capo. So most people are studying music across all of the notes. I'm only using 5 frets on a guitar. You, if you want to change key, you can use a capo. So
Hmm.
you only need to know one position on the guitar, and you just move that everywhere anyway. So I just studied this
Right.
one position of 5 frets
Hmm.
and everything within that 5 frets because I knew you could just move it up and down everywhere.
Right.
But um, and this you can use a minor, which is also the C major, because that's another conundrum of music, is that if you have some minor, major, all the white notes on the piano are just in A minor or C, depending on what the bass note is, or a collection of those notes. And the weirdest thing, I don't know how musical your um, audience is, but this will be part of my lecturing as well. If you start on an A minor chord and go to a C chord, that C chord won't sound as sad as
Mm.
won't sound as happy as it normally is unless you stay on the C longer than the A minor. And in a flash, this is a really weird thing, like the infiniteness, because at what point do we realize we're sad or happy? But it's not an A minor chord that can be 3 different modes. But that A minor chord, if I go back to the A minor chord after the C, it won't be as sad as what it was first until I
Hmm.
play it longer than I played the C. It's all a matter of pairs.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It's really, really bizarre because you'd
Yeah.
start talking about it and people going, oh, this sounds scientific, but at the same time, it should be, they should at least trust us that that might be what they're feeling. And certainly musicians need to work that out. Or a songwriter can go, oh, you've got 2 chords and, a C and a D. But if you go and put them in reverse and go C, D and D, C, which is a
Mm.
really unusual thing. There's a lot of hit records. Jim might know this is very rare. You usually have 4 chords in modern music that's in a
Yeah.
box.
Usually
They
one,
usually
four,
change,
five, and something.
yeah, they never usually have the two in the middle the same. They usually change 4 different ones or two and 2 different ones, or very rarely do they have two in the middle. And that song Happy by Pharrell Williams has got two in the middle, goes there and stays for two in the middle, and it's a big deal. But something happens. Those 2 chords are different. They're the same chords, but your head space will be different
Mm.
because it stayed on there longer than it was. And this is the fascination I have with music and the mathematics of it and the infiniteness and the spiritual thing, because you feel stuff,
Mm.
it's spellbinding, really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So yeah, but most people wouldn't even think about, well, I've got to change chords because they're obsessive compulsive, got to change chords on it. John
Right.
Lennon played one chord, that ticker to ride, it's just an A. The whole verse pretty much is in A, but he
Mm.
changes to a mixolydian mode halfway through because he sings a different note. He's not
So,
playing the chord. He's just and this ticker to ride, he's got a ticker to ride. He's doing like one of the most complex jazz singer things. He's singing a note that no one's even playing that shouldn't be there. And that's the Hendrix chord. First time I think it was heard in popular music.
so
That's awesome.
is it? I mean, is it something you feel, or do you plan to do this? Like if you're putting, I'm going to do the chords this way to get this feeling, or is it something you feel first and then you think, oh, I want to find, identify this and tie it to it,
It's
or
a
is it
drug.
both? Is it both? I
It's a
mean,
drug. It's like a drug. Once you take LSD, suddenly you go realize there's another dimension to this world we're in, and it's probably the dimension that we're going to go to when we die. And like the Tibetan Book of Dead was the manual for trippers in the 60s because it seemed to describe what that state is of the hallucinated um, state. So, and that Hendrix chord is that. I think it's something I called the scale the beyond scale when I first discovered it because I couldn't fit it into any of my modal theory. It didn't belong anywhere. I actually have a picture of music. I made this is a picture of a house that I created to
oh
try and
yeah, that's
describe music theory. It's got seven
yeah.
houses, 7 rooms, and
Hmm.
to describe the Hendrix chord in the scale, I said, oh, you just switch off all the lights and just look at the stars.
Oh,
That's
wow.
the metaphor for what that's going on in that chord. And that's why I really, and my lecturing would be on the basis of the Beatles and why, you know, the Beatles were so great. But they kept it a bit of a secret, it seems like, they didn't
Right.
know about the Hendrix chord, what it was or why it was different. They just knew that that feeling was like a drug,
Hmm.
a musical drug, pretty much with no hangovers.
Oh man, I need to look more into
That's
that.
how I see it. Yeah,
So
that's how I
how
see
does
it.
this how does that all of that like shape your songwriting, now versus like,
And mhm.
in the past, you know?
Well,
How has that changed for
my
you?
my guitar playing is like a keyboard player. I don't play normal chords the way people play. I've written a lot of stuff on keyboard, my solo stuff and sort of church stuff as well. But
Hmm.
um, when I play with the church, I'm mostly on guitar and I use a lot of strings that are open. I don't finger a lot of strings. So, and then I move shapes around that end up reaching augmented and diminished chords without me even knowing I was doing it either.
Hmm.
Gotcha.
And because, but yeah, but the Hendrix chord, I don't think I ever came across that. Um, until I realized what it was. Now with my students, I'm a songwriting mentor, teaching people. So I open them up to these things. I write a song, with lots of major chords, and then they suddenly realize, they sound like John Lennon. And I say, okay, now write a song with a Hendrix chord,
Hmm.
and so while they're working away at it, and that it's developing their music, musicality, maturity, enriching them
Hmm.
psychologically, philosophically, everything, like whatever music is, that it works on so many levels. That's the weird thing about music. And they invariably write really amazing songs. And
Hmm.
they don't know until I sit down and, okay, let's work out the DNA or the modes for each of these chords. And they realize, they go, oh, no, I am really clever, aren't I? I say, yes, you are. They said, I just played three major chords.
They didn't realize how clever they were.
Yeah, and I have to find examples of stuff for some of these things, or been writing my own. But one of the hardest ones was to write C, D, E,
Hmm.
a song that would go, a major chord, three in a row major chords,
Right.
right?
Let's.
And and I found one that, it's in a relative. It's asking me to look at my audio settings. I'm going to just check that my
Hey,
um, noise cancellation is off on this
right.
one. I'm just looking into the sound. It doesn't look like I've got a auto. I'm going to take my auto off the audio and put it on low, faint background noise or
Yeah. Low.
high background speech. What should I go for low, do you reckon? Because it's on auto.
Or we could try them both.
Yeah, I'm just going to try this. Can you hear this better?
Yeah. That's
That's
perfect.
better?
Yep.
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to, so it kept asking me for these because at least Zoom's clever enough to know that someone might be trying to play music and they're not boorish Luddites or people. So I'm going to play the day tripper thing once more just so you got a better
Cool.
version of
Cool.
that.
Cool.
Here we go. That's how I play it. So there you got a proper one of those. So what was I going to play you this time before I got so really interrupted by myself? I was
Were you
going to
interrupted
demonstrate.
yourself?
Yeah, I was going to demonstrate something
Oh
before I
man.
did that. So this is. Have you been listening? My students, I call them out. I always call them out. So that's how
You
they
caught
play.
us.
Who's he going to pick on this time? It's an old lecturing trick, Ask your audience, ask your students questions so they go, "Am I next in the firing line?"
We got caught.
Yeah. So what was I going to play? Jimmy James.
I don't
Oh,
remember.
something with CDE, right?
Yeah,
That's
I knew
it.
that, but I don't know
CDE.
what the song
Yeah,
is, obviously.
yeah. Okay. Well, no. This is what CDE sounds like.
I've heard
And you
that.
think,
That
have you? Well,
sounds
you probably have, but I can't think of it. To
it
tell you the
sounds
truth,
kind
you
of
know
like
what it is?
What about
Lola.
Lola?
Lola,
Yeah.
See, it
like
is
by
that.
the
And
Kinks.
that's the
Yeah.
example. That's the
Nice.
example I use on my website.
Right.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that's really complex.
I'm
Really
proud of
complex
us that we
theory. A
actually
jazz guy
knew it.
would tune into. What's that?
I'm
Totally
proud
heard
that,
that.
Jim and I knew the song when you played it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
what I
that-
immediately heard was Lola. Go ahead.
But that's the
That's the
one you
weird thing.
found, you said?
No, I'm going to play the one I found that's much more incredible than that. Like
Okay.
in my top pantheon of songwriters is John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix, and Pete Townsend. Believe it or not, and it's a Pete Townsend song. Same chord, two in the middle. So that's actually an E flat major 7. Sorry, play it right. When I hold the guitar up like this, it makes it hard to finger some of these.
Yeah,
That's
I
equivalent
can hear
to
that.
C, D, and E,
Yeah.
right? But he's got this C major 7, which is really nice. He's got the F with the 9, and he does the sus4. But they're the same chords in the middle of the 4, so you've got two examples of something here.
That's on Tommy, right?
It is. It's
Off of
Come to
Tommy?
the Mirror off the Tommy album, but they call it See Me, Feel Me, and I'm not going to
Yeah.
sing it because it's really high. It's worse whistling, isn't it? So that's the best example of it. And two examples there where you've got 4 chords and the 2 middle ones are the same with slightly different extensions or inflections that they technically call it. I've become much more aware. I've only got a diploma in music, but I've become aware of a lot of the terminology and that. I had a professor of music in Kansas City who was, I was trying to get peer review for my augmented and diminished scales, and several professors I've approached, and I think they all think I'm mad.
That's where I'm from, by the way.
What, professor?
Kansas City. That's where I'm from.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Kansas City, Missouri.
Missouri, yes.
Most people don't know Kansas City's in Missouri.
Yep.
Jimmy
Well,
James.
Mis-
said.
I correct
As
them
m-
if they say that it's in Kansas.
Of course you do. Well, as misery as a lot of
Yeah.
people come from misery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love Americans, and Charlie Parker came from Kansas City, who's the guy who played that flat fifth note, which if you have an octave, do to do, there's one in the middle that you're not allowed to use, and it's called the devil's note, the tritone devil's interval, and that's of course in the Hendrix scale, and Charlie Parker was the greatest exponent as far as jazz saxophone. He was regarded as the greatest exponent of pushing that note, which is pretty much in all of the blues rock riffs, Sunshine Over Your Love. They use that note. It's used so much in blues rock music.
Go ahead and play
It's all
that.
mathematical. Huh?
So go ahead and play that now. There's a sunshine from
Look,
real love.
you don't want to get me started. This is my party trick. If they give me a guitar in a party, I'll give them a musical history of the science of music with all the examples like I've just done there. And, hours later, people giving me drinks and drugs and all sorts of things. And, no, I don't need the drugs because, usually it just runs its own place, and you can drink and drink and drink because you're on another level of a heightened metabolic rate with music, which is why people go, because they feel good. So I've done that at a couple of parties. So you don't want to encourage me.
Don't do it, Jim. Oh.
I've given you some of the biggest secrets there. I've given you the Hendrix chord. I've given you the
I'm
four
gonna
with
steal
the
them
2
all.
chords in the middle.
We got some
and
free-
I told you about
Free ones.
You what?
You gave us some
You
free lessons.
Free lessons.
You just got an insight to what my lecture tours would be like. They'd be very much like this, discussing music really, and why music was great, and why the best evolution in music has come, believe it or not, from hip hop. I think, and being a drummer, I recognise that too, because the hip hop, the rhythms, and the rapping, the way that they do polyrhythms with the words and the rapping, that's a pretty great evolution of music in the Western world. I think the hip hoppers really absolutely hip hop rap, really clever, and the sound effects and all the stuff that and the fact that they can use big words in rap, you know, which has really broken the mantle. Like, you couldn't use anything more than street language in pop music, you know, but they used all big words, and so anyone can use anything. So it's very legitimate. I've got great respect. And yeah, Dr. Dre, absolutely on a melodic level, because he was doing all the melodic stuff. Have you seen his film, the Defiant ones? They catch him playing some Mozart in his studio, and they come in, the camera says, "Oh, you shouldn't have seen that." He's playing Mozart on the piano.
Oh, yeah.
He got caught.
You're not supposed to. You shouldn't.
You
have
got to
seen
keep
that.
the image up, right?
Right. He lost his street cred.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I'm sure he doesn't really care. Any great artist doesn't really care what anyone thinks, I'm sure. Like John Lennon just wouldn't play live. And they said, "Why don't you come out and play live?" He's just watching the world through a TV set and writing songs like Double Fantasy and Free as a Bird, one of my favourite songs of all time, with lots of augmented and diminished chords through those Real Love and Then and Now. Like, he didn't need to go out and play the same songs every night. I wonder, like, people say, "Oh, you must miss it," you know, people on stage clapping in glory. And I said, I think they're mostly giving other people the attention anyway. I don't think they really respected me. I had some guitar players come up to me and they go like that, you know, from the front of the stage. They go.
I bet Jim would.
I don't know.
You'd go up and say something. Hey.
I've had compliments from the best people. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I've had some compliments from the compliments only as good as it's. You're only as good as your influences. I think Oasis said that, but when people give you a compliment, it depends who, you know. People like the same band for different reasons too. I never went, "So I love the Church." I say, "What do you think about last album? Have you got a last album?" Yes, yeah, I'm your biggest fan. Yeah, you're my biggest fan.
This is the last album, Starfish, right?
Yes, shit like that, you know. That was a good album.
Yep.
No,
definitely.
but I'm
Tell us
serious
about
that
that. Tell us about that album just a little bit. Like, what, from
It
your
was a
perspective, how you
deconstructed-
felt about it.
Well, we'd done Heyday, and we were writing songs as a band, and found our feet, and the audience seemed to like it. So it's always encouraging that you've got an audience, because, you know, if you don't have an audience, you don't have a band, you know. So it was nice that we got some appreciation, and the songs were kind of minimalist. Instead of Heyday, which was the full blown with orchestral, you know, arrangements and things like that on some of the songs, which was magnificent. We always kind of like, instead of the record company said, "Do what you did last time, do what you did," and you don't.
Right.
You can never. Everyone will tell you that you can't repeat your things. It gets too obvious anyway. I think cosmically people realise, and so we just deconstructed these songs instead of having all of because the Church is this trick. It's like a harmonic trick that. And I showed you there's tricks in music, the A minor, the C, that the perfume or the nuance of these things are different. I have this with the jingle jangle sound. It's not like the Birds with the 12 string that they're strumming and they're going. It's a deliberate correlation of counterpoint. It's called counterpoint. We have the bass, you've got a guitar, another guitar, and intertwining riffs. So like Chopin, they didn't play chords because the songs were out of tune. The instruments were tuned to a Pythagoras tuning, and you couldn't play a chord until they had a tempered tuning. And so it's a bit like Bach. Did I say Bach or Chopin? It's a bit like Bach. That combination of notes, that especially Reptile is probably the best example of it. It's a very strident version. All three guitarists are playing different intertwining rhythms.
Yes.
And what would happen when we were sort of jingle jangling more than that's a strident version of it. When we're playing notes all together, picking notes out of the chords and playing riffs over those, or both of us, Marty and I, both picking notes out of the chord for Almost With You, which is the most original Australian church song, I believe, Almost With You. It has this induced other sounds, like you can hear orchestra, you could hear trumpets, and you could hear violins and that. So we would kind of emulate those with, you know, orchestrations and keyboards and things like that. But in Starfish, we decided, no, let's just let the audience hear what we're hearing, these induced other harmony that's being caused by the interaction of the notes. And that's another reason why that album sort of works, because there's things that you hear that are not being played. That's an interaction between the the scales.
Hmm.
So
was the song
Under the Milky
that
Way
you
was a
wrote-
joke.
No,
was a
no.
joke.
So
was a joke.
was the song that you wrote on that album? Was it New Season? Was that your song?
Yeah, a
Yeah.
new season. Yeah, that was very
Yeah.
the demo for that so psychedelic, and yeah, the manager, the Australian manager, I think he might have heard that back then, and so he was a great champion of the band actually, but we had to leave him because there was some problems with the accounting of the firm that he ran, and it, nothing to do with him, but also the American record company said you need an American manager, so we got an American manager, took the opportunity, but he's still dear to me. And interesting that church manager I mentioned that was around Starfish time, used to manage a band called Baby Grande. He signed up Steve Kilbey's publishing, and Steve gave him this song called Under the Milky Way, which was a bit of a parody of a Frank Sinatra song. Yeah, and that's how it was kind of
Never
written,
heard of that song,
like Under the Milky Way. Yeah, well, this is. Oh yes, you have.
I've never heard that about it.
I'm joking.
I've never heard
you
that
haven't-
about it. That's interesting.
You haven't looked at the internet, because there's mashes of that song and other songs, and I don't really want to. It's a really good money spinner, so I'm not going to go and say, but I'd say Almost With You is a very original church song, but Under the Milky Way is not very derivative. The chorus is quite good as an original, but yeah, that song was a demo that Steve gave to the manager to sell to someone as a clubby kind of song, and then the manager said, no, the church should record this, and we said, oh well, it was an acoustic guitar, and we were rehearsing all the other tracks for Starfish, and we didn't rehearse that one because it was an acoustic guitar, and we were rehearsing with electric instruments, and we didn't really think it was very important anyway. So the guy that the studio we were recording in was financed by a Japanese firm, and they put a synclavier in there, which was a hugely expensive digital keyboard, a digital computer keyboard thing, and they had a whole room dedicated to and their own engineer, and they gave the song to him and said, oh, fuck around with your new toy and use Under the Milky Way, and so he was there, and he put backwards bad pipes, which gave us all a good old laugh, and quite silly, sequences and all the rest of it. And we thought, oh, very well, very well. And then we got to the end of all the backing tracks had been recorded for Starfish, and they said, what are you going to do with this song? And he said, well, what? He said, I need some guitars. And said, can we put it up? And he put some guitars on. He said, all right then. So Marty played some acoustic guitar over it, and then it was pretty close to what Steve's original demo was, actually, what you hear. Like, I don't think anything more was really added to it, except for Marty made a mistake when quite a big trick in recording for a lot of bands who don't have scalic instruments, are very good folk musicians. What they do is they've got a song that's got a G in it, they'll go and get a capo, say, oh, we need another acoustic guitar, but we don't want to play the same thing twice, so I go and play it up here instead. They'll play. I should have used I'll use say a C there. This is like most folk bands will do this. They'll play it up here. So it's the same chord, but it's capoed up. So it's like as if you're playing a different instrument. This is the thing about the capo I mentioned earlier on in our thing, that with guitar players, you can just move, change key and everything like that just by moving that, instead of having to sit down with a piece of paper and write out all the new chords to transpose something. They just put a capo on there. So what happened, Marty, was, the original part goes, and then Marty, they said, oh, we want to double track the acoustic guitar, so what do we do? He said, oh, okay, what? Just play it up here. So because he thought that was the same chord, but it's not. What he did down there was, but he did this. So a bit of the magic in the song is that mistake that he made.
Wow.
Of playing it's called an extension when you add extra notes to a chord, and so he made the extension wrong. So the other thing about that song, because everyone's really interested in, but on a technical level, the guitar goes of that to that. If I played what Marty played up here as well, I have to do this thing like a Hendrix chord. I got to go like this. The other thing is Steve's playing a bass note there that's not supposed to be. Most people go there to a G. That's the classic cliche, but he plays, because he did this on a piano, wrote it on a piano, and he was trying not to be typical. Going A minor to that, he would have gone, oh, that's really boring. So he did that note on the piano instead. So this is how you'd have to play. If it was the piano would sound like this. Or actually, I'm putting Marty's bit as well as the piano bit. And then it goes to this, which is another mode. It starts off in a Dorian mode, which most people think it's A minor. It's not. It's a very folky kind of A minor, a Dorian mode. It goes back to a normal A minor, and then it goes to that on the guitar, but the bass is playing an E. So it's actually playing an E minor because the bass will rule, and everyone thinks it's a G, but it's not. So anyone who really wants to play that song on acoustic guitar should play it like this. Oh, sorry. It's not so.
Oh wow!
And you know what? Whether Steve had that hearing, it's actually another thing. It's a Beatles thing. That's how the Beatles used to write songs on piano. They just didn't know what they were doing. They just mashed stuff together. So they'd have bass notes that weren't related to the chords, and they just feel their way because the science of the universe is rolling right in front of them. It's all very visual and very repetitive across all the octaves. So Steve would always say that, you know, that the church are Beatles classicists. Absolutely. And most, you know, Bowie absolutely was a John Lennon guy. Tom York was very John Lennon too. I can see in their chord shapes and that they know stuff that John Lennon doesn't. Only John Lennon kind of knew stuff like that. So this is the gist of what lecturing I kind of do. But so obviously that Under the Milky Way thing, there's no piano on the actual track, but when you're on a piano, you can do that bass and the chords mashing. That that is what's between the guitar and the bass. And so when it got to the backwards bagpipe, they asked me to do a solo on it, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to try and hide that backwards bagpipe with a wah wah going wah 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 wah, like Daffy Duck having a spack attack, you know. So I was trying to disguise it. So I had the wah wah on, and they said, okay, play a solo at the end. So I played a solo, a few solos, and in recording you just do a whole lot of tracks quite often, and then they just cut the best bits of it. And so I made a mistake on one of them, and what he would tell, he heard that was the right one. And I've never been able to recreate that mistake ever, because it's a Dorian mode and it switches quickly to an Aeolian mode. And he picked that Dorian mode note out of all of the takes. The one that there was the mistake, he just said, I'm using that one. So there's the solo is actually a mistake.
Wow, that's cool.
Well, one bit that I didn't do intentionally, because it's all on one string, because I have this thing called an E-bow. It's like an electronic violin bow.
Oh, yeah.
Shall I show you one of those? I've got one around here somewhere. Not only do I have one, this is my spare box of about 3 in here, I think. Yeah, there's 3, because they break. When I used to have to throw it off stage to the roadie so that I could get back and play. So that's an electronic violin bow, and you chuck that on the guitar over a pickup, and you can even make it, as it goes close to the pickup, you can go. So it's the only thing that can really break you out of having a percussive instrument, because it turns it into like a violin bow. So I was using that on Under the Milky Way with the wah-wah, and that's why when you see the video, I don't even have a pick. Actually, I don't even have this. I'm kind of like just pretending.
Pretending you have one.
I think actually I had a pick, but when it came to the E-bow, I didn't have an E-bow, because we just got flown in LA to make the video, and they gave me a guitar, and I didn't have an E-bow, so I'm pretending to sort of have an E-bow, so you can't really see that on the video. But the tricks.
We won't tell anybody.
Hey?
So were you guys surprised that they made that the single then?
Yeah. Well, we'd listen to it in the playbacks, and we'd all have a laugh about the backwards bagpipes, and Steve would go, "Hey, Captain, you need to take it," you know, do a Star Trek kind of joke on it. And but it's it's a very intoxicating song, and it's I don't know if I should drop it here, but you know how the Radiohead got sued for Creep because it was the air that I breathe. You know, that's another trick. Again, that's one of these major fifths trick, but it's called a major three because it's a major in a major key instead of a major fifth is a major in a minor key, which is in every classical. They had to always do that because in classical music they said that it's too sad having three minors, so they had to always change one of the minors to a major in the chords. So that's a major to a major, and it's a major three, and it's so intoxicating that, you know, Radiohead copied it, got sued for I think they let them have half their song. The publishers of Albert Hammond Senior, not Albert Hammond Junior, the son from the Strokes, but Albert Hammond Senior wrote that "The Air That I Breathe" that the Hollies made a hit with it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Lana Del Rey wrote "Get Free," which is the same trick, but she does actually have a chorus. Yeah, but Radiohead sued her for a song they'd already been sued for stealing. And that only had half it.
Pass it on, right?
So yeah, Google Lana Del Radiohead on the internet, and you'll see the what's going on there. So that there's something intoxicating about that chord progression.
Yeah.
Now the other Milky Way chord progression, we've got a slightly different thing because the bass is playing a different note than normal. But they have a mash on YouTube of Love Song and Under the Milky Way. You haven't seen that?
No.
Yeah, they cut between them. You've seen it mash, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to check it out.
I'm gonna go see it now after we get done talking.
Well, Australia's been so ripped off by Americans too. You know, Guns N' Roses did a song called "Sweet Child of Mine," which is stolen completely from an Australian band's second album, second track called "Unpublished Critics." Verse, chorus, and guitar solo.
Oh, even the solo. The
intro.
The intro.
Not that intro is just apparently Slash doing a bit of a guitar warm up. That's what that intro. Very, very original, highly original, fantastic. And he knows scales because he's playing that in a G position on the guitar playing and not in a D position. Well, they tune to E flat and that. So I know that he knows theory. He's been taught theory for him to we could work that out, I think. Pretty wild accident otherwise. But it's the same. You'll be shocked. And when you go to the internet, if you think that there's an outrage about Lana Del Radiohead and also the mash, you know, with Under the Milky Way, you want to see the mash for Australian Crawl is the name of the band. They're a very good Australian original songwriting band. The best songwriter that's actually passed. It's a bit sad, but you'll be shocked. It was one of my favourite party tricks too. It's like playing the Australian Crawl track, Unpublished Critics, and then watching people, the outrage as it goes from the verse to the chorus to the solo, the outrage, and they never sued Guns N' Roses for that. Actually, another little tidbit here, you know, that Guns N' Roses took their name from a band called Rose Tattoo, an Australian band. That's where they got inspired, because they were obviously listening to Australian rock music, thinking no one in America is ever going to figure this out. And when they came to Australia, they got Rose Tattoo to support them.
Okay. But LA Guns, right? LA Guns was the other...
No, this is Guns N' Roses.
Right, but didn't somebody come from LA Guns? It was another band.
I'm not sure. I don't go that much. That's about as far as I go.
Okay.
No, Guns N' Roses. I mean, this Rose Tattoo got a very cool hybrid because they had a song called "Bad Boy for Love," and their bass player ended up in a band called X, the Australian version of X, which was a seminal punk band, or one of the coolest Australian punk bands as well. So they, there's a lot of it's great Australian music. In fact, I thought we might be talking about that because I've actually talked about on some of these podcasts about Australian bands that really influenced us, like the Masters of Apprentices and a song called "The Real Thing," which is like a 6-minute song that ended up #1 for 3 months on Australian radio, and it's a psychedelic epic. And #1, like, yeah, Australia's got some interesting things that we don't realise that the world doesn't know about, actually.
Right.
Australian Crawl's one of the big secrets. Masters Apprentices.
I got some research to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're well worth it. Those bands. Yeah.
Hmm.
How much time we've got?
We've
I think
got
we've been going
about
for almost an hour and a
about
half.
30 minutes.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure I cover some of your solo stuff.
I'm
I
very
really
proud of my
feel,
solo stuff. It still
yeah,
holds water.
I really feel like your solo stuff is very experiment. You're kind of like a painter, and it's very rich with experimentation and texture, and I never know what to expect from one track to the next, which is cool.
Yeah, I don't like writing the same song, and but to give you an idea, the first album, after we had success with Starfish, this label Ryko Disc wanted to release our solo stuff, and so they released Steve's second album, which was an instrumental album. They released Marty's second album, which was more better recorded than his first album, and they released my demos of my recordings that I'd done as an album. All three albums came out on Ryko Disc together, and I got recommended in the pages of the Billboard magazine's recommended section. We just went to visit our lawyer in LA, Century City, and she said, "Have you seen this?" And shows me Billboard, and there's my album, Man, Child and Myth, recommended in the recommended section. And so, oh, that's interesting. So she said, "Oh, you can have that." So I was reading it to everybody in the lift as we're going downstairs, and said Peter Koppes should do more of that. And they that's the reaction I got to that. Peter Koppes should write more songs for the church. My demos in the recommended Billboard section.
That's great.
It's nice to be recognised. I don't feel neglected there.
Yeah.
I've had some joy.
Was it? Did you feel like was it a really freeing outlet for you to do solo stuff? You know,
What happened was that I had kids, and so when I'd be off the road, I'd stay at the house and have months at home. So I'd didn't go out, didn't have much money to go out either, but I've been out, with the band that. So I had two lives, so I'd just be at home, right? And my partner was a singer as well, and so she actually released a single that I wrote that Steve and Richard from the church played on during the remote luxury recording session. We just popped in there because the manager that was championing me, he thought that it'd be good for her, and she was actually pregnant with a second child, and she sang this song "Love Can't Imagine," which I think is a really great song. You can find that on the internet, "Love Can't Imagine," and EMI released that as a single at the same time we quit with our manager, and so they dropped any marketing of that song, and I was about to actually record a solo song for EMI as well, and then they just, we didn't have the management in Australia pushing, so I put out another song through a local label from Bondi Beach instead, called a Requiem, Love, When Reason Forbids, a Requiem, that I wrote sort of accidentally after our lighting guy had died, and I'd never known anyone who died, and he was also the lighting guy for the Hoodoo Gurus, and he was the only person who really took an interest. He said, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you doing any solo stuff?" He's the only person who really took any interest in my solo career, actually. So I wrote that song after hearing the news. I just recorded the backing track and went out to this peninsula south of Bondi Beach to come to terms with it, and just wrote a little poem for him, and then I went back and it just fit the song perfectly, so I sang it all in one take. It's like sometimes you just have this thing that just carry you, and there's big long notes at the end. I had the breath for it and everything, did it all in one take. And
that's awesome.
Send it to his
I might be
parents
mistaken,
in New
but
Zealand.
don't you
They loved
have?
it.
Do you have some
It's my favourite song.
female backing vocals on there, on that song?
No.
No, okay.
Are you insinuating? You're insinuating I got a
No.
I've got a
I know
very
you
good
have
one.
them. Well, you have them
I've got a
on
good
some of the
voice,
songs, but I thought that was one of them. But I think maybe I'm just
No,
mistaking
I'm
it
thinking
with
you're
another one.
conflating that with another one called The Lost Piece,
Well, I
which
have
was
that
another
one.
time. Yeah, the friend of mine, I did
Yeah, you're right.
one
It was that one.
one track vocal on the Lost Piece because a friend of mine played dulcimer and he came over and I said, I'll just put down a quick vocal track for you to play dulcimer along with. And while he was doing that, his girlfriend was listening to it and she said, we did it. And she said, I think I've got an idea. So she did a not call and answer, but counterpointed, not counterpoint because that's in the same time. She put a vocal track in between my vocal track on that track, the Lost Piece, and that was just mine's just and I didn't want to change my one track, one first take vocal on that either. So, but I probably could have done a better job of it. But I thought sometimes I like the realism.
Right. You're happy
Was
with the
that
first
on
one.
was that on the second album, From the Well?
Yeah,
Okay. So you had more than you have I think Horses in the Sand also has some female vocals on there, right?
yeah. This is a funny thing. If you watch the Defiant ones, I think that they mention introspection, the label that Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine started called Introspection. And this guy, Steve Gottlieb, who's a really cool New York label owner who ran TVT Records, he signed me up for that label. And Trent Reznor wanted to get off that label because he said everything there was shit,
No, no.
on that label.
Wow.
But he's a very grumpy, I don't know what it is about these geniuses. He's certainly a genius on the level of Tom York, but why are they so fucking miserable, Like, what's the matter with them? Okay, they can be genius. And not only that, they seem to drive themselves mad with their own genius or anger or something. I don't know what it is. Anyway, I didn't take it personally. I know how to fight, actually. And my father got me boxing lessons when I was 5. And I had one fight at school and broke the guy's nose, in front of the whole school because I had to go and fight this guy because some big bully said, I'm going to fight you. And I said, you're bigger than me. You play fucking rugby. And I'm not going to fight you. Here I announced before all of us, he's a much better fighter than me and he could beat the shit out of it. And he didn't know what he said. Well, you're going to fight Robbo, this little fucking lackey, instead. And I said, that's ridiculous. He said, just be there behind the school sheds at lunchtime or else I'll come looking for you. So, so the whole fucking school was there. Like my rite of passage, the whole school was on the oval behind the PE sheds, and my friend of mine who was a footballer to march me there. He told me later on he'd had a deal with all the other footballers that if that guy jumped in to punch me up after I beat the other guy, that they'd get in between me. So he's a good friend. And so we get down there and walk into the circle and I said, well, this is ridiculous. Are you going to fight dirty or clean? And he ran at me and I just broke his nose and fucking my own thumb and there's so much noise, the whole school going on. Humans are fucking cunts. They love a fight, don't they?
They love it.
That's why you don't have to worry
right?
much about the world, the way the world is these days, because it's in their nature. People, it's in their nature. They try and pretend they're not in their spiritual. Nah, they're animals.
Yeah.
That's the difference between a human and
Savages.
mankind.
We're still
Mankind
in the
is the animal version of
Colosseum
human.
days, right?
Yeah. Well, this is a theosophical thing. They'll talk about the difference between humankind and mankind, and the hue is like the spiritual version of mankind. You might find all different things, but that's a discussion that went on in a Theosophical Society meeting Monday. So humankind is the spiritual version of the animal that is mankind.
Yeah,
Suck on that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I get bored, I need this stuff. I don't watch sport, so I've got a lot of time on my hands, so I have intellectual pursuits instead. I debate with my I'm a devil's advocate and I debate my own and everyone else's things, So that's where that comes from.
That's cool. Can you talk about Richard Plug? And I think he
love
played on
Richard
some of
Plug.
your solo stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And can you talk about, if you are willing to share, the time when he, was dismissed from the band, and how, your perspective on that and how you felt about things and inviting him to play, on your solo stuff. Yeah.
Well, I really like him as a human being. He's kind of got an indigenous Indonesian bloodline as well, and Dutch, because his parents were ancestors were Dutch people from Indonesia and that. So Wild Man of Borneo, we kind of make fun of him about, but he's very earthy, like Indigenous. I love Indigenous people. I really align with that sense of the world more than anything. I always look at everything from the primitive. If anything comes along and say, what would a primitive person, not a superstitious primitive, person, but a pure, like, Australia's got the Indigenous people of Australia, the Australian Aborigines or First Nations, they like to be thought of, described as. Australia's got a cooler rhythm than hip hop. It's called corroboree, but it's a sacred dance, and they don't really share it with anybody. But you do come across it. The corroboree dance is like the coolest rhythms I've ever heard, and their spirituality is based on no ownership. And everyone, that's never going to work. But it worked for 70,000 years of their society, and they had trade routes right over the size of Australia, which is as big as the United States, and they had trade routes throughout Australia. And trading, and they had agriculture, they had all these things, they were a nation and had 600 languages and that. So, Richard has got a sense of that. He's that kind of being, but his heroes are Keith Moon and Iggy Pop. What could go wrong?
No. Right, absolutely.
And so he got on the plane that's called hedonism, that's, rock stardom, and we don't know if he ever got off it, but I did. I'm really glad that I did that solo album with him, because he was actually a replacement drummer. I had another drummer set up to do this, the band, The Well, and that other drummer took a more, he said, I've got to go on tour with this other band to pay some bills. He was a really funny guy, actually, one of the funniest persons I've ever met, this other drummer. Drummers are real wild characters. I'm a drummer too, obviously, but I'm not just biased about that. Drummers are fascinating. So Richard said, "Oh, well, I'll fill in for him while he's gone." And then and I had the keyboard player from Ice House Flowers, the original keyboard player was in the band, and he's a real tripper as well. They're both trippers, and I am too. We did one of our best gigs on Dried Mushrooms once, actually, and the guitar player from Died Pretty was like a next echelon of, church appreciating bands. He said that was the best. He said that's better than the Church. That's one of the best gigs I've ever seen. We're all on Dried Mushrooms, but I think they did play better than that. It helps them concentrate or something. I don't know. The rest of the time that I was always trying to direct them live, waiting for them to miss the next change, because we didn't play a lot and rehearse a lot. But so Richard came in. He said, I want to stay, and can I stay in the band? And he got on really well with the keyboard player from Ice House, and the bass players from the Celibate Rifles, which is a bit of a joke for the Sex Pistols. Celibate Rifles, they're like and they had a very, very educated, erudite, aesthetic lead singer, the Celibate Rifles, and I even played with him. Richard and I played on his solo album. It's a Wig, 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 Wig World, as you'd expect to be titled like that. And we went and toured that album live, and I got to play some of he let me play 4 of my solo songs in his set with that. So that was a great experience. But the bass player, he said, you should get the bass player to play from Celibate Rifles to play with you. And man, that was a band of people of like camaraderie and fun and luck, and just very fortunate, but it never stuck. So, but I'm really glad that Richard got to do that, because it redeemed him for his own sake and for everyone else's sake who knew that he'd been passed up in the church, because he was 3 Australian drummers lost their jobs because of Australian producers that year. The Died Pretty drummer he got kicked out, because what happened in the 80s is everyone was competing with dance music kind of rhythm, so they're forcing rock to be played to a drum click track. The drummer from Crowded House got kicked off the Crowded House album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he sadly probably didn't really recover from the rejection, because he did kill himself, a while ago. But that's because the producers forcing drummers to play. What happened with Starfish, if you're going to go back there, before they had this computerized recording that you could go and cut and edit drums, in a computer, we had to tape. We'd spend all morning taping one song, and they said, "Okay, we've got the verse. Okay, got the second verse. Okay, got the chorus." And they were just listening to the drums, pretty much, or the guitar and the drums together. But that's how they used to get the drums perfect, with the guitar and the drums, by making you play the same song 20 times and then picking bits and pieces, and then they cut that out and stick it on the wall, and they say, "Okay, the producers are going off to play golf, and you can go home now." And the engineers would sit there and stick it all together. The next day you go and say, "Geez, we're good, play, well, look how good we are." But, so that's how we got away with it on Starfish. But on Golden Afternoon Fix, the computer system had gotten into there, and they just thought, Richard was just too undisciplined. We'd say, "Oh, we're going to play that with that," and then he wouldn't do it. He said, "Didn't you?" "Yes, I did." He said, "No, you didn't." And and I'm not going to go into a personal kind of riff that exacerbated it.
Yeah.
As exacerbated, yeah. But just a very little thing. But live, he was getting too excited live, and the songs would just be like too fast, all the songs through. So people,
With the early live videos I've seen online with the church, noticed that a lot of the songs were played faster than the actual recording. So I guess that had something to do with it, like, considerably faster. So
I kind of preferred that, actually.
Yeah, well, it puts some more life into it.
Yeah, well, because we can be a dirgy band, live, and the songs, when you record a song for an album, it's supposed to suit a whole lot of different listening environments, like morning or afternoon, and we're not a party band, and there's no blues in the church, hardly at all. You have to really look deep to try and find any blues. We're very white, classical style music, really. And so we record the songs in this kind of place that wasn't party, and sometimes when you play that live, it'll sound a bit too dirgy. So I didn't mind him, playing some of the songs fast, but they just ended up getting too fast. And we only noticed it when J.D. Doughty came in and did a live tour for us on the Gold Afternoon Fix tour. And then we realised he would start here and take the energy level across 2 hours and you'd always end up at the same point, and the audience seemed to love it, and we loved it, and he that was the maturity, his maturity was as a drummer. So then we started realising that was a really good way to go, instead of like frenetic, loud, and we were so fucking loud, like before pedals we'd turn a Vox up on 8 and then guitar down to like 5, and you'd turn it up for a solo, and because it's jingle jangle, it wasn't like da 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 da. It was like 2 Vox AC30s in a small venue like Hoboken in New York. Once I heard a recording of that, and people would say, "You guys are the loudest band I've ever heard."
Those things are loud,
yeah. Any more?
I want to make sure we talk about syncretism.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm really intrigued by this band, the name, and everything. So let's hear.
I found the name Syncretism in a music reference book, actually, that from a local professor of music. And syncretism is when you take an idiom and evolve that idiom. But then I realised it also relates to religions being mashed together, which I think that's kind of funny. Like with the church, I had a church organ, then I started playing guitar like a keyboard, and then I got these speaker boxes that the church organs used to play through, that the Beatles used, and I didn't know that until I got my Gold Afternoon Fix. I just had these 2 rotating keyboard speakers, and suddenly that's what I've been trying to do the whole time, is play a Hammond organ and with the guitar. So, and the band being called the Church, that was kind of very strange, become obvious with the church organ speaker boxes, and the band the Church at that time with Gold Afternoon Fix. But so syncretism, Halloween is like a I don't know if they called it, it's not really a conflation, but a syncretism of um, Christianity and paganism. That's what Halloween is.
Yeah.
Voodoo, interestingly, is a conflation of Catholicism and voodoo. The Voodoo are a society of people who now live in Benin, Africa. That Hendrix scale, I used to call that the voodoo scale. And then I thought, I better fucking research voodoo. What the fuck is voodoo? And I looked up Google, and they said, oh, it comes out of Haiti and New Orleans, and it's voodoo dolls and all that punishment stuff. I thought, that's weird. And then I looked up Ecosia, ECOSIA. It's another platform that plant trees. If you use their browser, their search browser, Ecosia, the money they make, they plant trees. So I looked up Ecosia, and suddenly they said, no, the Voodoo, VOODUN people came from, they were an oppressed group of people in ancient Egypt, and they crossed from Africa to the west to Benin. That's the French name for the area that they have. They have a voodoo festival there every year, and there's no violence at all. They actually have more deities than Greek mythology, and they've got what are they called? Intersex or high, what are they called? People that are born with both sexes. Can't think of the name of them.
Hermaphrodite?
Hermaphrodites. They've got hermaphrodites. It's got a lot of female deities and that. I thought I'm going to go and study this a lot more because I love Greek mythology and that. But so that's what the voodoo are. So voodoo. What voodoo is in America is a conflation of voodoo and Catholicism, which obviously the Catholicism is the punishment, guilt-ridden, aggressive, based on a vengeful God, of the Old Testament. Are we going to go there? I'm in a band called The Church. When I tell people, say, I wasn't in a band called The Church because I fucking liked religion, or believe in it or trust it, organised religion. That's my caveat. So the voodoo's very so that's what syncretism is. So I thought, wow, that was discovered after we're using the name syncretism, and I discovered all that other stuff. But it's Dave Scotland and I, and he writes the music. And because of his generosity to me when I was a budding guitarist to learn all the scale stuff that he knew from Richie Blackmore's by far the best lead guitarist in the world from a point of view of technicality. Absolutely. Like he used to transcribe Bach and play all that stuff. And what I liked about that was the first album I bought for myself was Deep Purple in Rock, and that was also Ian Pace, a left-handed drummer, is like probably one of the most original drummers after Ginger Baker, I would say. And John Lord, the keyboard player from Deep Purple, was more of an influence to me than Richie Blackmore, actually. I think harmonically now, when I realise it, because I always had an ear for organ anyway, and him and Richie Blackmore were always kind of challenging each other. And you want to see some live videos of them in Europe, on TV shows in Europe where they put fucking Germany, and the audience are sitting there and they're loving it, and they're fucking jamming around. The keyboard player, John Lord, gets a drumstick and goes and starts poking the back of his Hammond organ and that after Richie Blackmore had done something wanky with having a drink while he was playing a fucking solo or something. They're doing this all on TV in the 60s.
That's entertaining.
So I thought for Dave Scotland, I owed it to him, and it was a bit of a bookend. We started the church really with Steve Kilbey and Dave Scotland, I think, and I'd left the church, and I thought I owe it to Dave Scotland because he never had a collaborator. And I think Steve needed a collaborator, and most other people agree, for him to get his feet, and he ran with it and flew anyway. He would try and diss that now because I've seen he's been putting down the contributions of other members from the first couple of church albums, so that we got in the way of his vision and all the rest of it. And a lot of people say he's his own worst enemy, and in some of it, but he had a right to do. Seance was actually a church album that was his solo album complete, and I think he really learned a lot about songwriting and all the things that was all a part of his gang, which was the church. It's a gang, I think. And so when Syncretism, Dave Scotland was very creative, and he wrote all of the music for that, and I just added guitar, and he didn't write lyrics, so I wrote the lyrics trying to, because I had nothing more to say. I thought I'd said everything in my solo stuff. So I try to interpret what I think he might express, or might even talking to himself and talking, a healing. I always thought lyrics should be a healing thing. And yeah, I'm very proud of that record. But it's his music and my contributions lyrically and to his song, and we produced it together.
Did you do some of the solo guitar work on some of the songs? No, that was all him. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Some great
He's an
solos,
amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that. The second song, I Live, was about, he does 3 solos in 3 sections at the end of it. And I Live, it's about an acoustic guitar, because he works as a luthier at one of the top guitar shops as well. And because he showed me how to get a good guitar sound, because he was into electronics, and we built these little things. My father's an electronics engineer, built me my first, Vox amplifier, and these little devices that you'd stick your guitar into so that it would push the amps harder to get a tone, because the hardest thing to get a good guitar sound, and he was so generous, such a beautiful human being, generous with his, most people say, I'm not going to competitive, totally uncompetitive, beautiful. So I'm really glad that we did that together. And, I put that up against the New Church records as equal to any church. Same as we haven't mentioned the Reformation, which was the album that Steve and I did with the drummer from the church after Marty kind of, the band kind of dissolved or just went into a hiatus. And then, so Marty wouldn't let me join the church again after I'd left. I did the Magician Amongst the Spirits album after Steve said, why don't you come and do some? Oh, yeah, all right then. So, and then I went in there for one day. After the first week I said, what's going on? He said, oh, Marty doesn't think we really need you, but I'll talk to him. So he said, oh, come in tomorrow. So, okay, went in there with my guitar amp and that, did 7 songs in one day, including the title track, Magician Amongst the Spirits. Then they didn't call me back. Marty was the manager of the band. He said, you're only getting 10% as a guest writer for your songwriting contributions, and you're not in the band. And I said, that's not right. He said, that's the way it is. Right.
Oh no.
And so that's the true story there. And then they lost their deal, and the American record company put out the record without paying the advance, because he was after the money from the advance, and so the advance fell through, so that was the end of the band. And so then Steve had a studio, and he said, oh, why don't we record an album together and try and raise some and see just a studio recording, and that's where the Reformation came about, which is a bit of a joke on the name of the church, the Reformation and things like that. And then we started up the church again after that with Marty, and some people would say Marty joined the Reformation because the band had changed its sound and direction through the Reformation. So some people would say Marty joined the Reformation. We just called it the church, and I would agree with that.
Was that the Hologram of Baal? Was that the album?
That was the album that we did after we went on tour to raise money for an album. And then Tim and I pretty much, made the album after, we wrote the songs with Steve and Marty in Steve's studio, and then Marty took off and Steve took off Sweden, and Tim and I finished the record, did all the guitar overdubs and keyboards and that we did to finish that one off. It's a pretty good album, I reckon.
Oh, that's great, yeah. Yeah. Cool. Let's see. What did we not talk about, Jim?
Who else? Oh, there's someone else we can throw under the bus, isn't there? Come on, mention them. I'll throw them under
everybody.
The bus. I'm not after them. I'm not after them, but the truth, it should be known. Because not only I'm talking to the other musicians in bands, not just the public for the gossip value of that. People in bands. I'm a teacher. I'm a nurturer, a sharer, and I have no agenda to punish anyone or to start a fight with anyone, because I find it boring actually to fight with people. I have no interest in it, and I avoid it at most. But I like to nip things in the bud. Anyone in the band who's wondering about the trouble, because I teach a lot of people and they're in bands and I hear all the strife and that, you have to put up with a lot. If you've got a good chemistry, you should put up with a lot. The church had a lot of chemistry, and we didn't necessarily get on with each other as people, actually. Good enough, but I'd never say we're friends. Richard and I are friends.
Yeah.
And even then, I think he's a bit sus. Bit too selfish for my liking. No, but he's just a natural guy. He knows, I care about him, love him. We always catch up,
Yeah, cool. Do you want to tell us about your daughter's project, Rain Party?
Oh, Rain Party. That was. They had a few different names for their bands, the Kicks and Rain Party, and my eldest daughter, she was at school and she was getting a bit bullied there and stuff like that, and then she just decided to quit school, and I bought her a nylon string acoustic guitar, showed her a few chords, and she just became a songwriter, and always has been. And then her sister and her, I showed my youngest daughter a guitar scale, which is this thing. It's a bass scale that Jim recognised, but it's what a lot of guitar players use. It's also what George Harrison uses. It's called the sliding scale. It's only 2 fingers. It's interesting because it's like a digital. Hendrix uses 2. Putting notes together. So it's a bass scale. And sometimes you can play it like these like, if you play it backwards, it's the blues scale. You don't even have to look at your guitar. It's a Mick Taylor trick. It's this beautiful essence. So I think it's really funny that it's only 2 fingers. Again, like the digital zeros and ones in computer that we now have. Quantum computers, they just basically zeros and ones, just this duality. The binary, that's the word, binary, and we are binary people, like the duality as well. But it's a fascinating. So I just showed her that, and she's been a lead guitarist. She plays bar chords, because she's a musician, writes songs, and no kind of like I'm a girl who plays bar chords. They both play bar chords, that's really hard. Like Leonard Cohen wrote a book called Beautiful Losers, and he just complained about the F chord in that Beautiful Losers book. Have you ever read that?
No.
I haven't.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah. He complains about F. He didn't write that seriously as a work of
like the F. That cuts
the
off your blood flow
as I
in
say,
your hand.
I better show everyone who's not a musician. This is F. You've got to
tried to
kind
play
of push. It's the hardest place to play is right next to the end of the guitar, especially if the guitar's a cheap guitar. It's almost you have to hold all the strings with one hand and do an F. And as I tell my students, it's not called F for nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
No, so don't complain. B flat's worse.
Yeah.
It is. B flat's a big joke. You want to ask a guitar, how do you play B flat? They all you see the cowards and the lazy and the clever people.
Yeah, they have different forms of it, right?
Yeah, so bar chords are something that most girls avoid because they probably don't have the strength either. But on an electric guitar, it's not too bad. But so they formed a band called Rain Party, Kicks. Ménage à Trois was the first name. I said their mother was French, Belgian French from the Congo, and I said Ménage à Trois, that's a threesome.
Yeah.
They were, I think they were only 17 or 18. I thought, and but that was the first name, Ménage à Trois, and then they had another.
Dad probably didn't
called Bright
approve
Red.
of that.
Who, me? I don't care.
You don't care.
No fucking way.
What was the next one? What was the next name after that?
Bright Red.
Okay.
Bright Red. The Kicks, Rain Party. They supported the church sometimes in New Orleans. It's like nepo babies or something like that. But they were great. They held their own. We would never be concessional like that because I don't like
if they sucked,
an elephant in the room.
Them, right?
Absolutely, but they never listened to me either. I said you should have vocal harmonies like the Beatles and that. So no, it sounds too much like this other Sydney band. I said doesn't matter, But I still believe that the Beatles had 4 lead singers, and they used to sing together and do melodies. I think that's what the church is sometimes. The guitar melodies are like someone singing along with the lead singer in harmony and stuff like that. If you look deconstruct it.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, no, I think we pretty much covered everything. I'm sure we left off some stuff, but you got a life of work to cover, so it's a lot of stuff there. But Hey, thanks so much for taking the time, man. I love talking
Yeah,
to
it's
you.
great.
Thank you, Jim and
This was a
James.
great
and Jim.
conversation. So
Oh,
It's good
thank you. I'm glad
talking
you
to you.
enjoyed it. I enjoy people who are interested as
Yeah.
well.
I appreciate you
Absolutely.
taking the time. I know your time is valuable. So
Well, I've got to get this website finished. I just, got to learn another software program or something like that.
Keep
Okay,
an
I
eye
better
out
get
for it.
going. Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
Good to
Thank
see you
you.
around.
Take care,
Let us
Peter.
know how it goes. Alrighty.
Will do.
I
Thank
don't
you.
even know how to sign out. It's been too long. Could be it. Okay, see
I
ya.
always have to remember every time.